If it's well established that military and government employees cannot publicly support a particular political party or candidate, why should commanders be allowed to share their religious perspectives with other members of the military?
Do you mind if I know something about this? And it is not allowed. It is not allowed. Just like, your military superior, can I see a show of hands from anyone who's a veteran or is currently on active duty? Thank you very much for one thing. Thank you very, very much. We all know that your military superior is not your shift manager at Starbucks. In the United States military, I told you we're going to talk about sex. Having sexual intercourse with someone other than your spouse, adultery, is often prosecuted as a felony. If you're ordered to go to the base dentist at 1600 hours or 4 p.m., and you don't go, failure to go can be a crime under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. It's a completely different system. The bone, the muscle, the sinew, the veins, the arteries, the flesh of the U.S. military is good order, morale, discipline, unit cohesion, health and safety of the troops, mission accomplishment, military readiness. And our Supreme Court has ruled on this, and not some left-wing radical on the court, but Justice Rehnquist, one of the most conservative Chief Justices in American history, in a 6-2 decision, made it very clear that the compelling governmental interest in the military is not what the rest of us have here as civilians. It's to maximize good order, morale, and discipline, the body, so that we can increase the lethality of our military to protect the full panoply of constitutional rights for the rest of us. I don't even know where to begin in the 98 seconds I've got left, but just yesterday, a young man came to us who's a highly decorated Army combat soldier. He had been ordered to celebrate Christmas in the workplace. Ordered. What do you do when your commander comes in and says, I just want you to know that my wife, Mary, and I, we're praying for you to find Jesus? The concept of sharing your faith and free exercise, you're going to remember, we have the no establishment clause. We have things constantly focused on the family, and Mrs. Dobson has pushed the National Day of Prayer and these prayer luncheons and prayer breakfasts. 69% of the U.S. military is Christian, but many of them are not Great Commission Christians. 23% have no religious preference whatsoever, as I mentioned. The military is an entity that survives on unity. And I understand that death and their lives are on the line. I have 3 generations of military academy graduates in my family. My son-in-law is an Air Force pilot who deploys continuously into the down in the sandbox. But you need to understand that there are limits, time, place, and manner limits. And we have regulations. We have, for instance, in the Air Force, we pushed hard for this, Air Force Instruction 1-1, Section 2.12. Leaders in the Air Force must ensure their words and action cannot reasonably be construed as showing favoritism to one faith over another or no faith. And that regulation, ladies and gentlemen, is complied with far more in its breach than in its conformance. And when you denigrate someone's honor, integrity, character, intelligence, and courage by telling them they haven't accepted the right version of Jesus, there's no difference between that and telling them that they lack intelligence because of the color of their skin or because they were born a woman. Thank you.
Do you need the question restated?
Sure, that'd be helpful.
The question says, if it's well established that military and government employees cannot publicly support a particular political party or candidate, why should commanders be allowed to share their religious perspectives with other members of the military?
So the question to some degree involves apples and oranges. It's talking about 2 types of speech. The first is political speech by a government employee laying out a political position. And the Parker versus Levy case that Mr. Weinstein's referred to is talking about that type of speech. It was an officer publicly criticizing the Vietnam War, which obviously was a different position than the government took. So the government does have considerable right to shut down certain types of speech by government employees. The other type of speech that was referenced is talking about a commander exercising his freedom of religion. It's different, and there are some limits, as Mr. Weinstein articulated, but I would disagree with exactly how they play out. So, for instance, an Air Force instruction says that military personnel, quote, have the right to individual expressions of sincerely held beliefs to include conscience, moral principles, or religious beliefs unless the expression would have an adverse impact on various military goals that it lists out. And so the basic position is the commander does have a right to articulate religious beliefs, but there is going to be a potential line that's crossed because he's in a position of power over the subordinate. And so there's going to be a difference between mentioning that you're a Christian, or perhaps letting troops know that there might be a Bible study in addition to a number of other things going on, or having a Bible in your office along with a number of other books. And those things have been held to be okay. But certainly if the subordinate gets the impression that their job performance, that their promotion, their OER, or any other type of review is at stake because of how they respond to any expressions of religious belief, then you might be into a more coercive situation. Now, I would add one thing. Freedom of exercise in the military isn't determined by what we call a heckler's veto. In other words, the most easily offended or sensitive person can't control expression of speech just by being easily offended or sensitive. So we have objective standards that we have to lay out. I think Mr. Weinstein and I agree on that, and I think certain examples we definitely would agree would be too far, and at other points we might disagree, but we would agree that these are important topics to consider and think about as we try to respect everyone's free exercise in the military.